Everybody, my guest on the podcast today is the amazing Allie Nichols. Allie is a CEO and co-founder, which is also a founder of Getaway. And we're going to leave it at that for now. We're going to get to know Allie. I just met Allie a few minutes ago. Awesome already. Excited to get to know you here and record it for everybody. Allie, good morning. Yeah, it's still morning our time. You're in Eastern time zone as well. Me too. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah. So you are very welcome. Allie, where are you coming into us from today?
So I am coming in from a beautiful phone booth down in Miami, Florida. It's, perfect weather yet again. So not to rub it in everyone's face, but
Well, it is perfect weather here in the Northeast in New York.
yeah.
Last week we could barely breathe with the air quality issues, but now it is gorgeous out.
Did you guys handle that okay? Was everyone good?
Yeah, we were okay. Like my daughter's school said send them in masks. They're not going outside. Like it was pretty serious. Like the sky was weird. It was yellow. And if you
Yeah.
like Google pictures of Times Square from last week, it was like orange. It looked like the apocalypse. It's very strange. And we might be getting some more. We'll see. It depends how the winds blow. Maybe that's what they're saying. But anyway, we don't need to talk about the weather and all that. We are going to get to know you. We're going to get to know Getaway and just have an awesome conversation. So Allie, first things first, what's something that you nerd out about? And I'm going to take real estate off the table. You cannot say the thing that you nerd out about is the thing you do for a living. When people do that, I'm like, come on. I would say you might want to go find a therapist and get another hobby if the only thing you nerd out about is the thing you do for a living.
Oh God, that's so mean. It truly is.
Well, it's my show. I get to be mean here.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse right now, but I am getting married this fall. And so all of my free time right now has been on Pinterest boards about wedding details. And I don't know if I love it or hate it, but I'm spending every waking moment that isn't on the business on this damn wedding. So I can tell you everything about an escort card, a charger, different votives on the table. It's become ridiculous.
Sorry, I just woke up. So I heard something about motives on the table. Yeah, I do like weddings. I have participated in weddings. I was in one myself in 2009. Where are you getting married?
Congrats. In Montana, in Whitefish, Montana.
Very cool. Very cool. How many people?
We're going to have about 100.
That's great.
So not too big, not too small.
Yeah. Do you consider that a destination wedding?
Yeah. So it will be a destination for every guest. Nobody lives there, which is great.
My wife and I, we got married in the Dominican Republic and we had no ties to it other than we liked it. And we had a destination wedding. So you all are having a great time.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Very
Unfortunately,
good.
That's my piece right now. I wish I could offer something more.
No, that is, I know for all the listeners who have ever planned a wedding around the detail, like they're like, yes, that's another full-time job. Like managing the people who say they're going to manage it for you, they don't.
Yeah.
At least that's my experience. And then you're going to be like, babe, what are we going to do with all this time when we're done with this thing? Like,
totally, 100%.
You're like, you mean I don't have to talk to like
hobby?
You're like, I don't have to talk to these people. I'm not going to be getting calls that are like, hey, remember that quote? It's going to be 20% more. Hey, remember that thing? It's going to be 20% more. It is a magical industry, isn't it? It's unbelievable.
I started calling people and not mentioning it was a wedding just to see if they would give me a different number. It's been a wild experience, but everybody says it's worth it after you do it. Because I've gone through that phase of like, why are we doing this? We should have just eloped, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool. All right, let's see. What else do I want to know about you? Well, let's talk about something that's inside of your comfort zone. Something that's inside of your comfort zone that you know is outside of somebody else's. What is one thing that comes to mind for you?
Oh gosh, and I can't use real estate again.
There's no real estate until we come back from the commercial break. I'm setting the hard and fast rule here.
Okay, great. What is something I know that's in my comfort zone? Well, I'm an avid golfer, so that's something that is well within in my comfort zone and can can talk the talks there.
Yeah. Did you were you like collegiate or high school? Like, did you have some, not professional, or
Yeah,
did you ever, or professional? Yeah.
oh, not professional. My dad wishes, but I played in high school and then was fortunate enough. I actually started the women's golf team at my college. So that was pretty exciting.
Cool. What college is that?
Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh,
Of
Pennsylvania.
course. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. I know Carnegie Mellon. Yeah. Very cool. So you were like one of the founding people, and who did you end up competing against? What other schools?
So yeah, so we were D3,
Mhm.
Division 3, and it was an interesting Carnegie Mellon. They play colleges like NYU, WashU, Emory, a lot of other like D3 schools that are more focused on academics and haven't funded sports programs, but tend to be a
Yeah.
little bit larger than your traditional Division 3 school.
That's cool. Yeah. Nobody's ever answered golf, and that's a really good answer because this is something, golfing is in my comfort zone. Doing it well is, I don't know if it's a comfort zone thing. I'm just not consistent enough. Like, that's the thing with golf is, and I've had a couple of like not professional golfers, but people that like played in college and that still play
Yeah.
like amateur, but they're good, like they're scratch, and you have to be consistent. Like, it's
Oh my
I
gosh.
don't think it's possible. So for me as a golfer, and do you get a chance to play often?
Yeah. Now, especially living in Florida.
Yeah. Like, I can go out and I can probably drive fine, and I might have a
Yep.
medium game fine. But when I get near the green and then I'm on the green, I'm done. Like, it's so bad. It's
It's
just,
150 yards in. That's how you score well.
I
Like
know
that's where
I
the
mean,
game
that's
of
it.
golf is won.
Yeah. What is it? Drive for show, putt for dough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. That's it.
Exactly. I
I like
wonder
it.
though, a lot of like things in golf and the discipline and mental, capacity could be translated to business, like especially for you with your clients.
I work with some athletes, like former athletes. Definitely. There is so much in the mental game of, especially golf, is you can let one shot ruin your whole round. And if it's in the first
Yeah.
hole, you can screw it up, or you can say this. And I talk about this a lot, like the best performing people in business, they also know how to shake it off. Like, oh, I have a new shot.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this again. And you know this, and we're going to talk about this later on in the episode about fundraising. That is a consistency game, because the number of people you have to talk to before you get a yes, for most people I know that would go to get VC venture capital, it's staggering. Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
statistics out there, and the number of people you have that will say no to your product or service before somebody goes, oh yeah, this can fit for me. So like, we'll probably get into this later, because there's a lot around that, but being able to shake it off. What's something that's outside of your comfort zone that you know is inside of somebody else's?
Oh gosh. It's so interesting. I think we talked about this a little bit before we joined, but I have shied away from all things politics a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
especially as we have an election cycle coming up. Everybody, and being in Florida,
Yeah,
it's
what's
a
going on
hot
in
topic.
Florida?
Yeah.
What politics in Florida is that? We're recording this on Thursday, June 15th. You have two things in Florida.
There's a lot
You have a
happening.
former president who's been indicted in the state of Florida, and then you also have a governor who is like one of the leading candidates from the Republican Party.
Well, and now the mayor of Miami just announced he's running.
For president?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Amazing.
It's just
I could
like,
see why
what
I'd
is
want to
going
shy
on?
away. Be like, I'm too
Yeah.
busy. Like, I'm going to be at the golf course. I'm getting married. I just don't care. Like, I don't care enough.
Yeah. Well, and it's been so funny too. So I moved to Miami from San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
and you couldn't be in two polar opposite places. I'm like, I'm just in the middle. Don't talk to me. I'm neutral.
You're like, yeah, that is quite the culture shift.
Yeah.
Quite the
Yeah.
culture shift. You're like, I don't actually have an opinion. Well, I do, but I'm just not going to express it because it's just not worth it.
Exactly.
Yeah, politics is a good one. So one more question for you before we go to a break. Let me see what I want to ask you. So if I was to be able to give you 5 minutes to give a speech, and the entire world got to hear that speech, what would you speak about? Allie's like, real estate, of course. I'm like, nope.
I was gonna say something like that. Oh gosh, I think I would speak about uh, perseverance and resiliency,
Mm,
and how there is, and I've experienced this throughout my career, and I think a lot of people have, asked me, folks that, I've worked with or mentored and things like that, of like, how did you get where I've gotten today? And it all comes back to, having a goal and not giving up and being really strategic about each step you take is a step closer, even if it's not linear. How can you get, my path has not been linear. It's just like,
mhm.
how do you get opportunities that can get you closer to where you want to be? Um, so that's what.
Yeah. Such a valuable lesson in business and in life. Right? Like all of it. All of it. I'm actually going to save my comments or questions for you on that, because we're going to bring this right back into what you're up to now, and like, because you mentioned your path, we're going to talk a little bit about your path and then talk about what you're up to now. Before we do that, we're just going to take a brief commercial break.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Allie, we're back, and it's me time. It's me time. For just a couple minutes, I'll put myself on the clock. Otherwise, we'll be here the whole time. Maybe, maybe not. What do you want to ask me that I can answer for you and for the audience? We met about 17 minutes ago. So what are you interested in that what are you interested in that I could answer for you?
So I'm a first time founder of a company, and, in these early stages, like, I'm doing all the sales, I'm doing all of the customer outreach, absolutely everything goes through me.
Yeah.
And and one thing I've noticed is, like, you have fantastic customers where you're like, I want to work with you all the time. I'll do anything to, like, keep you happy. And then you have these other set of customers that are very demanding and yield kind of nothing, and you can end up wasting a lot of time on them. So I'm very curious, in your field where you're working with kind of like, tech CEOs and founders all the time, have there ever been clients that you wanted to fire?
Yes. That's the answer is,
that's a strong yes.
Well, I've had a few. A little bit more about me, like, my bar to like people and be with people, and I think this is a good thing, is low. Meaning, like, I just genuinely like people. It's why I do this podcast, because I genuinely want to get to know Allie, and genuinely, like, people like, why you do the podcast? I'm like, because I'm genuinely interested in people, so I'm in a good field. So it doesn't take much for me to not want to fire you. Where I want to fire a client now, but also I spent 20 years in sales, so this is the same thing where I just and where I run into this is when people are just, and I know you said you work with a coach, so your coach will know this too, is like, if you're absolutely just uncoachable, like, if you're just showing up, and I'm not expecting people to do a bunch of work between sessions, but like, if you're just showing up and what I call, like, smile fucking me, like, who cares? Like, what's the point? Like, I don't know. Like, and you have clients to do that in the business world. Like, they're smile fucking you. Like, they string you along. They're telling you that, oh, this is going to be a huge opportunity, yada, yada, yada. You spend a bunch of time and they're just stringing you along. The difference would be for me is I get paid up front. So you can string me along if you want, but I'm quasi intuitive that I know that, but it just becomes not fun.
Yeah.
And because this is such a personal business, and because I like people, and like, part of coaching is understanding people's vibe and like their being, not just they're doing what they do, but like who they're showing up as, it just becomes like an energy suck for me. And I'm a total extrovert, so I get a lot. I can take on a lot of energy. It's funny you asked this. I will say I've had a few podcast interviews where I felt the same way. Just a few. I've been very fortunate. I've had a couple where I'm like, either this person's never been interviewed for anything in their life, or they're just a terrible human. Yeah. And
did you air them?
No, I did not.
Good call.
Yeah, I did not, because it wasn't, they're normal. They're good people. Right. But there's a level of, and you can see you're on this show now. You don't have to be prepared to be on here, but you need to be able to like have a conversation. I always wonder, people like go on podcasts, but they're just awful guests, like awful, like, well, like, but I'm scripted responding, like, ask me these questions, I'll respond. Do you understand that any decent podcast and any decent interviewer is not going to want to do that?
Yeah.
Like, even like, I mean, and this is what they do on like Jimmy Fallon, like the Tonight Show. That's what they do. Like, if I'm Bradley Cooper promoting my movie, I'm his manager or his agent, I'm going to go to you and I'm going to say, hey, Jimmy, here's the 4 questions I want you to ask Bradley about this new movie, but we're going to have a conversation about it. It's not going to be like, ask me about how it was filming with Steven Spielberg. I'm going to go and then recite it. Like, that's not how it works. It's not fun. But yes, I've had a few coaching clients where it's not quite the level of firing, but I'll actually just say, I'm at the point in my business where I'll just say, like, I'm like, do you want to, like, is this a good fit? Are you into coaching, or is something about me? It's like a relationship, right? You said you have a coach, you have a relationship with your coach, and you have a personal connection. I think you said it's a woman, like, she knows a lot about you and you probably know quite a bit about her, and it's all that. So yes, there's been a few times. I don't know that I've ever fired someone like straight up, like, we're not going to work together. I've definitely had to have the conversation though. I'm like, I got other people that want to work with me. If I was doing this for the money, I would tell you we'd work together, but like, we're not. And it's actually sometimes and I don't know if you've had this, you probably had this in your business relationships. That can be a really powerful conversation. You should be like, in the business setting where you're exchanging like time for energy or money for energy, and say, hey, is this worth it? Like you said, in the business setting, like, we got this huge deal, this elephant that we're chasing, but like, is it actually worth it? What am I giving up? I mean, I'm sure you've probably been in past relationships. I know I were. You're like, is it actually worth it?
Yeah.
So that's my answer.
I love it.
Nobody's ever asked me that before, Allie. I love that.
Thanks for being honest.
No,
too.
Like, no, never. I love every single person. 100% of the time, you'd be like, this guy's full of shit. That's so good.
Well, and I have to say, like, not to plug you too much, but anyone listening, if they're on the fence about getting an executive coach, definitely do it. Like, can change the trajectory of your career.
It is so funny. I'll plug the industry for a little bit. It's so funny how many people, I can't afford it, or I can't make the time. And I don't say this to people because it's offensive, but like, what are you making the time for instead? Oh, being busy, chasing deals, dealing with, a lot of the founders that I work with, not all of them, but some of them, they're not really CEOs. They're like technical founders, and they don't want to manage people. And they don't necessarily understand that when somebody is a small equity holder or a no equity holder, and I call it, I'm here for the paycheck, because that's what most people are. They don't care about your product like they do, and they don't care about the details, and they don't care about all the financial stuff. And you need to find other ways to motivate people. But it is interesting because, like, a good executive coach isn't arguably that huge a business expense, especially if you're running it through your company as part of, like, and your board says fine. So yeah, I mean, I think we could talk about that all day, but thank you for the plug for the space, for the community. I agree. I obviously agree. Your coach has done a very good job because you're giving her a testimonial. Maybe we'll call her. Maybe we'll call her out in a little bit too. I always like to plug the community. Well, let's talk about you. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your path to what's led you to what you're doing now at Getaway as a CEO and co-founder. So yeah, what about your background, Allie? What did you come from? Where'd you come from?
Yeah. So I first started my career in consulting, like every college kid that has no idea what they want to do in their life. But I ended up out in San Francisco. And at the time, all my friends were working at these tech companies. And I was like, that looks really cool. You don't have to get on an airplane every Monday morning. And like, you have coworkers you actually like, and like, you're working on cool problems. how do I do that? And so I had decided that I wanted to work at Uber because at the time, the whole idea of pushing a button and getting a car was like the coolest thing. It blew my mind. And so I just said, you know what, that's the company I want to be at. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be there. I think I ended up applying to like 60 different roles, got 59 rejections. And then finally I convinced someone that I was worth taking a shot on. And that I think really changed the trajectory of my career because I saw, I saw what working, and this is back, Uber had like 1,500 people. So it was a big company at this point, but coming from a company that had hundreds of thousands of employees, it felt so different. And the thing that stuck with me the most was like this attitude of you can just go get shit done, like run through walls to make it happen. And that's rewarded. And like execution and output is so rewarded, and not waiting for the perfect answer, the perfect outcome. And then working with such smart people that like actually want to be there. Like, this is like work nirvana. Like
which is so also cool. It's really funny that you're describing Uber.
Yeah, right. I know. And then we've talked, like you saw the demise of Uber.
And then they made a show starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Travis Kalanick.
It was so bad. It was so bad. But yeah, so that changed the trajectory of my career. But since I was a little kid, I've always been obsessed with real estate. Like I have a funny story, but I like used to force my parents to take me to open houses on Sunday. Like I'd open the newspaper and circle the ones I wanted to go to and try to convince them to sell their house and buy this one because it was so much better.
That's
so I kept
funny.
that going. Yeah, I kept that going through my early,
that's cute, honey.
Whole life. I, bought my first property at 23. Like I just was really passionate about this space. And so I was like, okay, I love this tech world, but I really want to get into real estate. Oh, wow, there's this whole space called prop tech. Like, what's that? Like, I want to go into that. So I actually ended up joining a real estate startup in the space in San Francisco. At the time, it was like 5 or 6 employees, and had the opportunity to really experience real startup life and go through, a seed stage company all the way through to Series C.
Wow.
I get to run almost every business function, build teams, take over established teams, learn just as much as I possibly could. I kind of call it my MBA.
For sure.
And got to a point where I've, I think they did such a great job, like, handing me keys to learn so much that I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this on my own. And at the time, the biggest thing, that company was buying property for institutions. Like there was a big blow up in the single family rental space where a lot of institutional capital was coming in and wanting to buy that as an asset class. And at the end of the day, me and my co-founder, we actually worked together at this previous startup. We're like, okay, this is great. Like, we love what we're doing. We built all this amazing product and teams and processes to do it, but we're still priced out of the market ourselves. Like, we want to start building our own portfolio of real estate. It's like we're in the space and we can't even do it. Like, can we build a company that actually helps the consumer and the everyday person and isn't built for the institution? So that's where we landed. And so we started Getaway.
Getaway. I have to ask, you had to pay for that domain, I'm guessing. That is a very common word.
So we have getaway.co. Getaway.com is available, but they want the small price tag of $500,000.
All right. So if we could, the GoFundMe link is in here. Help Allie and her team. No problem. We'll raise you $500,000, and then you'll get a 15-minute call. No. Yeah. I was going to say, I worked at a startup that had a very popular name, and the founder, I worked for the CEO, and he told me how much they had to pay for it. I was like, there's some big business to be had in domain parking, wherever the domain brokering. Domain, yeah. But .co, that's cool. Yeah.
It's crazy. I swear I get 3 emails a week from these domain, search advisory firms being like, we can go out and buy a domain for you. So not only are these people buying domains and like holding on to them, but now there's a whole industry of middlemen trying to broker domains. It's wild.
Amazing. Well, let's talk about Getaway. I always like to start when I'm talking to founders. What is, and you know this from being experienced in the space, and I had a conversation on my other podcast with somebody, and he used to run a business incubator. He said, I've seen over 10,000 pitches, and we were talking about, I said, first of all, good on you. Second of all, let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly in pitches. And he said, the thing that will immediately turn me off, and because you've raised capital, which we're going to talk about, I'm sure you figured this out, is he said, if somebody comes in and they start talking about their solution, it's almost always a no. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you, what's the problem that Getaway solves?
Yeah. So in general, as an individual, going out and buying rental property real estate or investment property real estate is a very complex process. One, you have to really know how to underwrite a property, which most people don't. And underwrite meaning, how do we project the revenue, the actual expenses, and think about all the downsides that could happen in buying real estate. Everybody's like, oh, I'm going to buy it, it's going to make money. That's not true.
Yeah.
So
if it was, everybody would do it if it was true.
Yeah, exactly. So that first piece of analysis and then the time of searching for a deal that makes sense for you is a pain point. And then you get to the actual transaction. And this is really what inspired us to start Getaway is when you are an individual investor, there are very, very, very few products available for you to finance your investment. And those products are, less than favorable compared to if you're buying your primary property, or if you were, a professional commercial real estate firm getting financing from larger institutions. And so we saw this huge gap for the individual investor, which is actually 17 million Americans own 1 to 10 doors in the US, but they don't have solutions when it comes to financing and getting into property or scaling their portfolios. So that's another piece that we're here to solve. And then beyond, once you actually need to get up and running and managing your property, being able to do that remotely, because we've seen this transition away from only being able to buy real estate in your neighborhood, in your state. Now people are, getting comfortable buying in Ohio from California. So being able to help oversee the management and the back office of actual, real estate ownership is another pain point that we solve.
So does Getaway also, so I hear the financing part, so the problem it solves is access. It's access in a market segment that generally has a lack of access due to lack of funds or just know-how. It's complex.
Yeah. So I think for us, our value prop is we help you find, finance, and manage investment properties.
Yeah.
Which I think for our segment, the financing piece is the biggest wedge, just because there are limited options in the market.
Yeah. So let's talk about, and I was sharing this with you before, we're real estate investors. We do, it's one door, right? So it's Airbnb stuff.
Yeah.
And then we're in a small REIT with some friends, and we don't have anything to do with the management of that. That's done by somebody else. When you say 1 to 10, that's like a multifamily. So that requires, so we're not talking necessarily about, it can be like an Airbnb or something, but what you're talking about, the sweet spot is, hey, I own this multifamily. And a friend of mine, they just bought a multifamily in Austin near the campus, near University of Texas. And they're good real estate investors. Part of what you offer is the ability to manage that. When you say manage it in what way?
So oversee both property management and then all of the bookkeeping, performance reporting, tax preparation, all of the pieces that a lot of folks don't talk about in real estate, but there's so many advantages to owning real estate when it comes to even taxes that, the mom and pop investor might not even be aware of or taking advantage of themselves. So walking through that process as well and making sure everyone's maximizing on their investment.
Yeah. That's cool. So it's like somebody's qualified to work with you, like they have capital, they want to go out and they want to go buy a property. you play the role of kind of, I'm not going to say middle. It's not just a middleman, but it's almost like you're consulting and then also providing ongoing support is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And we actually, in that financing piece, the piece that I think is like the most interesting for our customer base right now is we actually come in and we'll co-invest preferred equity into our customers' deals. So we'll come into the equity portion of the deal or the down payment. So now you're putting, instead of needing to put in, 20 to 30% of equity, because that's where things are at right now, you could put in, 10 or 15%. So it allows you to scale much faster.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. So you do a risk analysis on potential clients. You've got your war chest of things, and you're analyzing that along with them. So, but that's all. Like, the thing that's really interesting about that too is that me as a consumer of this service, I would assert, like, it would make me feel good that, like, hey, I think this is a property, and then I go to Getaway, and then you say, hey, we want to invest with you. There's like an additional level of social proof there, like, because you do this for a living. I like that. That's super cool.
Yeah. And that's the other thing though, is like not all properties work for us. So we're underwriting, we underwrite the borrower, like you mentioned, and then we also are underwriting the property. And like, we'll only take on a property that we believe, there's enough cash flow for everybody in the deal. So to your point, like, there is a sophistication or a level of sophistication when it comes to the underwriting piece.
Yeah. We'll put all the links to this in the show notes. I'm sure people want to take a look. I would like to talk. Yeah. So we'll put that in there. I would like to talk now about fundraising. Allie's got a shit-eating grin on her face right now. Like, it's like kind of like a pained, like kind of a smile, but kind of a pained look. And most people who have raised funds, that's kind of the look. They're like, we did it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about fundraising. I would love to hear about your experience. And because we have you here, I'd love to hear any lessons that you might have for anybody else listening who is going to go through that or wants to know, like, what do people need to know about fundraising if they haven't done it before?
Well, don't be discouraged by no, because you're going to get a lot of no's.
Yeah.
The thing, I will say we were super fortunate. We raised last year and had options and that was, a blessing in a lot of ways, and feel very fortunate for that. But we did also have a lot of no's.
Yeah.
And it felt like a marathon, but in a sprint. It was like we had to sprint 26 and a half miles over a 3-week period. So the thing that I didn't expect was it to go so quickly. When we actually went out to fundraise, I was telling my co-founder, I'm not ready. Like, I think we should wait a little bit, all this stuff. And he pushed me. He was like, let's go have one conversation. Let's just go see how it goes. And then that one conversation turned into 3 conversations, which turned into 9. And then it just kept going and going. I think all in all, we talked to like 55 different firms in 3 weeks. And that's just that first meeting. And then that included second meetings and then third partner meetings. So it was more than 55 conversations, probably more like 100.
Wow. That's a fast turnaround.
It was really fast. Again, I think it was also conditions of the time. Now, I talk to our investors and I'm like, what are you seeing? Like, what's the funding environment looking like? And, they're like, we're starting to see deals go through, but it's still, the volume's really, really low.
Yeah.
I keep hearing that like pre-seed and seed investments are getting done, not that many Series A, and like, good luck if you're B or above right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just not favorable. Like, the models don't work like they did 2 years ago.
And nobody knows how to price anything.
Yeah.
Because the public markets have been, so many tech stocks are down 90%. So if that's the real value, it's like, how do I price a private company if your public comp is less than your valuation in the private market?
Yeah. If you think back to like, and you mentioned your college days. Did you ever think you'd be sitting here, CEO and co-founder who's raised some venture capital? Like, was that something that was ever in your vision or something you even knew existed?
I always wanted to have my own business. I didn't really know that it was going to be in the venture space until I started at Uber. And I was like, oh, I want to do this. This is cool.
Yeah, this is cool.
You get to like the problem and the scale of the problems you get to go after are just so big.
Yeah, well, and also playing with other people's money can be pretty freeing. I mean, not playing.
Also terrifying.
But freeing, but also terrifying that you're like, oh wait, my soon to be husband and I, we're not going to be sleeping in sleeping bags back in San Francisco, and I'm using San Francisco because that's in the news right now. We're not going to be on the streets if this doesn't work. We're still going to be okay. Like, and people are going to be okay, but you're not risking it all. Like in other industries, you kind of have to, like, people mortgage up their houses, and people still do that now, but a little bit different.
But I will say, like, you have to, the expectation is that you're taking a big swing. Like, there's no like small, like, oh, let's get this to, 5 million in revenue. And like, that's a great business. It's like, no, you have to go for the $100 million in revenue outcome, or it's not worth their time.
It's not worth their time. That's right.
Yeah. So that the probability of winning in this space is actually much lower than someone who's going to go start like a solid cash flowing business. Like, if you look at your like economic outcome, actually going that route of a solid cash flowing business is a much higher odds of success.
Oh yeah.
So it's this mental like warped thing.
It totally is. I mean, there's lots of public statistics on your chances of I think raising capital is like sub 1% or maybe 1%. Your chances of, and I do work for a company called Life Hikes, or a training company, we're a plus 10 million plus company, privately held, venture backed. The chances of hitting 10 million, I think, in any business, but especially like backed with investors, is tiny. And then like the 100, like the statistics are improbable, and yet people do it all the time, which is like, it's such a mind fuck. Is like,
it really is.
It's that you're like, oh my gosh, I know. Like, it's funny. It's like, and this is where like coaching come in, and like the drive, the ambition that you talked about is knowing it is possible. And you can point at companies that have done it, like hundreds and hundreds of companies. And then also knowing like, well, there's also these thousands of companies that didn't even come close. Or like the founders got in a fight and then that was the end of it. I always like to ask, as we start to wrap up, I have a couple more things for people listening that that are in the job market or getting into the tech space. I'm always interested for people that are building teams. What do you look for? Like, do you do all the interviewing at this point as well? Yeah. So what do you look for when you're at this stage of the company you're at? What do you look for?
It's so interesting. So one thing that I always look for on someone's resume is like, how quickly did they excel at the company they were at? Because I think that that's always a good indication of like, were you a rock star for them? And if you're a rock star for them, you'll likely come in and be a rock star for us. So that's an interesting, like, oh, okay, like you were associate, then you're a senior associate, now you're a manager, now you're a senior manager. That happened all in, 4 years. Okay, that's interesting. So that's one thing. I've now started to kind of turn my nose up about people who are jumping a lot. I know you're not, like, there's back and forth on whether that's a thing, but I get some resumes and it's like 6 months here, 6 months here, 6 months here. I'm like, okay, I don't know. It just, the time and energy to hire right now, it takes up. So it's a huge like resource drain from the business, especially when you're a small seed stage company. So if I don't think you're in it for at least a year or two, it's like hard for me to be like, oh yes, I'm a fuck yes on this person.
Yeah, but and also like as much as people are rock stars, but also the tribal knowledge, institutional knowledge, it just literally takes time to train people up in the space. Even if they come from the space, like you're going to do it your own way there. You're going to have your own standard operating procedures, and well, maybe not at a seed stage. You're like standard operating procedures. Like we're just trying to like sell some stuff and get some business done.
Oh my gosh. we just hired our first sales salesperson.
Nice.
And she's coming and she's like, okay, so like, where's this? Where's that? I'm like, in my head.
You're like, Allie, where's the sales playbook and the employee handbook? You're like, here. Go ask ChatGPT. That's what I would say. So I hear the progression. That's really good. What about personality? How do you know when somebody's a good fit for what you're building?
That's great. We personally like look for like bias to, this is so annoying, bias to action, but seriously, like high execution, willing to take risks and just go for it and not constantly need, validation from whether it's your manager or the people you're working with to keep moving the ball forward. So somebody who loves like being autonomous and autonomy, and that comes out. And then also there's this like competitive edge. I'm a super competitive person, so I like
really? I never would have guessed.
Folks that want to win. Does it come out?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know many founders that aren't competitive. That's kind of part of it, because you have to have the drive to win.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to win a lot. You have to know how to win even when you don't win. Well, win. I mean, who says that having to raise 55 no's is a win?
Yeah. Because guess what? I had a handful of yeses.
Yeah, exactly.
And now we're here and I get to bring my vision to reality.
Yeah. So let's wrap with that today. So what's next for Getaway?
Yeah. So we are looking to scale really quickly. We actually officially launched the product offering this past month. So we are open for business.
MVP. This is not an MVP. This is like production, ready to rock.
We're ready to rock and roll. So anybody that's looking to become an investor or scale your portfolio, we would be a great partner along the way. And, our goal is really to show and prove out that we have product market fit over the next 12 months. And then from there, we really want to scale this.
I think you will.
Yeah, it's been fun. I feel like from a demand perspective, we've like caught on to something.
Yeah, for sure.
Customers are really excited.
Yeah. And then you got the little thing of becoming a wife in between there and all that.
Oh yeah.
Just a little.
No, and the best part too is my fiance is starting a company at the same time.
Oh,
so
look at like
it's really fun.
So you two were attracted to each other for the pure stability. Stability.
Our house is chaotic.
I was gonna say, Allie, it's a good thing you have a coach, because like talking to your fiance, it's probably not a good move at this point if you're both doing the similar things. You're like, we need a break and just like enjoy each other without talking about this stuff all the time.
Totally, it's very true.
Yeah,
very very.
Also,
true.
I don't know if you're working with a wedding planner, but I'll bet you're both like, I would imagine it's pretty well planned out. You're like, we're gonna get this thing done, and it's gonna be great.
Well, it was funny, like. I kind of made fun of like all the decisions happened very fast. It was like, give me 3 options. Yeah. That one.
Yeah, that's how my wife and I are too.
Like, I don't have time for this.
We don't have time. Yeah. That's awesome, Allie. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on, for sharing your wisdom, for what you're doing. It sounds like a really cool market fit. I can't wait to learn more about it. And I think you're going to do great. Thanks for letting us get to know you a little bit. And let's have you back on sometime in the near future.
I love that.
Hear what's up. And if congratulations in advance on the nuptials. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And we'll have you back on soon. Thank you so much.
Love that. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.